Of your assignments. I understand that you have all that comes with your assignment. But our homeless count is growing. It's growing since some of you have been sitting in your chair for years. And it has not been reduced to the size where it's no longer, where the comment of it and the verbal consideration of it is no longer necessary. Our numbers have not been that reduced. I am asking, on behalf of those people who cannot speak for themselves, I am asking that you consider merging some of what is the homeless problem to be mitigated within your authority for reasons of accountability, if nothing else. You are the housing authority. That means that there is a house in the city, vouchers in the city, zoning and planning in the city, any creative measures that need to happen in the city, you are the authority. The homeless need you to do more than is being done outside of your authority. Lincoln Park closed. Provisions were not adequately made for those people. Marina Seaport closed. Provisions were not adequately made for those people. Some of them are on the street. Some of them are going to jail. Creatively speaking.
Thank you for your time. Next speaker, please.
Yes, in the name of Jesus. Anyway, speaking of this housing authority issue, one thing we all know is that rent control is going to send everybody on Section 8 out of here. We already have, in the complex that I'm in right now, like 9 people that had to move because their rent was up $200-300 because the landlords fear rent control. You know, so it's happening all over the place. The rent, Section 8 people are on a limit. You know, you have other people with money, they're not. So already you get less money from Section 8 if you want to come down in 2nd District or what and be by the water. You get less money. For a 1-bedroom, you get $11.38 compared to you get $2.45 if you want to be on Delamo and Cherry in Al Austin's district. So it already is kind of slanted, but it's going to run the people in Long Beach, either Compton or Hawthorne. That's how it's going to go. And so the housing thing is a big thing, and we don't want rent control. We don't want just cause eviction. Just cause eviction is bad. Rent control is bad. It doesn't control rent, keep it down, it spikes it. The highest place in the land is San Francisco. I just came from there, Oakland and Frisco, off the chain. The BART costs $6 to go one way. We pay $7 for a whole day here, everything. It affects everything in the system. It's bad up in the Bay Area. Everybody knows that. The second worst in the land is New York. New York, rent control, ever since World War II. You know, then Santa Monica is 3rd, rent control. And my ex, she lives off in the Hoover Hood, off of, by Imperial and everything. It's $2,000 she's paying over there. I'm living in Long Beach, living pretty much lavish, jacuzzi and everything, and paying $1,200. Oh man, she's paying up the yang in Los Angeles in the ghetto area. So no to rent control, no to just cause eviction, because you'd want to be able to get the drug. I don't care if you're Democrat or Republican. You don't want drug dealers stuck or somebody on Megan's wrist stuck in your place. You don't want that. You want to be able to tell the landlord, everybody, get them out of there. Compared to if they're stuck. No, nobody here want that. I don't care. Nobody says. So we can't have that. And just because, I ain't going to get on bust nobody's chops today. You guys do what you have to do, but think about it. Do unto others, you have them do unto you. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, and that concludes public comment, and the Housing Authority is adjourned. Thank you.
Let's see if I can make it over here. Right there. Thank you.
Where's the mayor? Does the mayor even show up?
I think He's running scared, so we're not going to speak. He's going to get money somewhere.
Oh, okay. Too busy raising money? Unbelievable. Give me about 6 seconds. Now for comment on agenda items, do I have to put a card in first?
No.
Okay,
You
good.
just
Just jump on it. Okay. Pardon me. Oh, yes, he showed up today. There he is.
Just waiting to switch the system on here, Madam Clerk.
Because I said something.
We're going to go ahead and switch over our voting system here in a second. We're going to call the meeting to order of the Long Beach City Council. We're going to begin with, like we always do, a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilmember Pierce is going to lead us in both of those today. We'll start there.
Oh, yeah, she's the one in trouble.
Now, for the Pledge of Allegiance, please put your hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We are, a couple announcements. Item 17 has been withdrawn from the agenda.
I need my
That's
agenda
item
back.
number 17.
Thanks.
Also,
Yeah, I got you.
we will be taking item 4 has been pulled from the consent calendar. So we'll be hearing item 4 after the consent calendar. And with that, we're going to begin with our presentation. So our first one is with Christina Kriechbaum, and it is for Break the Silence for Domestic Violence Month. So if we can please start with that. Thank you.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. My name is Christina Kriechbaum, and I am the Vice Chair for the Long Beach Police Department's Women's Advisory Group. First, I would like to express our gratitude to Chief Luna of Long Beach Police Department and the leadership of the Police Department for doing so much to combat domestic violence in our community. I would like to ask our wonderful liaisons with the Long Beach Police Department to join me. They're all hesitant. Chief Robert Luna, Deputy Chief Richard Conant, Commander Paul LeBaron, Lieutenant Greg Shermer, and Sergeant Curtis Yee. I would also like to have the members of our Women's Advisory Group join me as well. Alexis Sandoval and Tatiana Dorman of Women's Shelter Long Beach, Mary Walton of Interval House, Liliana Lopez of Sucasa, Dominique Quevedo and Mercedes Alanes of the Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles, Teresa Gomez with the City of Long Beach Department of Health and Human Services, Vanessa Pezzo with the Long Beach Trauma Recovery Center, Pam Rayburn of the Cal State University Long Beach Women's and Gender Equity Center, and Susanna Luna of the City of Long Beach Public Works. I want to thank also the agencies and advocates who were representing many of our domestic violence agencies out in the entrance, sharing information and resources with you as well as with members of our community. And if there are any other advocates in the chambers at this time, please come down and join us for this presentation as well. Silence hides violence, and by choosing to speak up, you can change a life today. Domestic violence affects us all, individuals and families, advocates, and community members. We know that 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men will experience domestic violence in their lifetime, and 1 in 15 children are exposed to this violence,
Pretty
and
staggering.
90% of them are eyewitnesses to this type of violence. It is one of the leading causes of homelessness for families, and our Long Beach Police Department and community partners are proud to have always served and protected victims and survivors of domestic violence, regardless of race, age, ethnicity, cultural background, and sexual orientation, or immigration status. We want to especially emphasize to any survivor who may be worried about seeking help that it is safe to access services in our city. We strive to continue working together on finding solutions to stop the cycle of violence. And with this, we ask that the Long Beach community join us in our Break the Silence Day, Wednesday, October 18th. We ask that you wear purple, and we've handed out some ribbons and information to all of you. The color purple and the purple ribbon were adopted as symbols to raise awareness about domestic violence, to remember the victims who lost their lives to this, and to honor the survivors who continue to endure this. Thank you for your support, for your ongoing support of what we do, and we look forward to ending domestic violence in our community.
Just stay up there, guys. Thank you very, very much. I do have a couple speakers I'm going to queue up right now. Obviously, we have a proclamation. We'll take a picture in a minute. But I just wanted to thank all of you for all of your hard work. I see so many of our advocates and leaders in this area, and obviously through the work with the police department and the chief, and you guys just do a great job, and we're just really proud and thankful of the work that you do to support people in our community that need that additional support and reinforcement. So just thank all of you for this important work. Let me go to the council real quick. Councilwoman Price.
Thank you. I want to echo the mayor's comments and thank all of you for the great work that you do. I've had the privilege and the honor to handle domestic violence cases as a prosecutor over my career for many years, and I will tell you that one of the most disheartening things as a prosecutor is working on those cases when the victims are not happy that you're there. They're not happy that you're involved in the cases, and sometimes it really feels mixed feelings for us in terms of whether we're actually getting justice at the end of a trial. But one thing that I know for sure from the victims I've talked to over the number of years is the one entity, the one hand that they'll hold, the one place where they'll go seek refuge is in the nonprofit organizations that are designed to give them support. But they're not really directly affiliated with the court system. They're there simply to allow these folks to transition, if they can, into a better circumstance. And that is a relationship that no prosecutor, no matter how caring, could ever comment on before. And so I'm very grateful for the work that you do, because despite the fact that you're not advocating in the courtroom, you're actually having a much more long-term, lasting impact on the lives of these folks than any police officer or prosecutor ever could, because you're offering them a hand to hold as they go through the journey. So thank you for everything that you do. I know Interval House is in my district. I'm very, very grateful for their presence there and the great work that they do. All of the organizations, Women's Shelter, all the organizations that are represented here tonight, of course, Long Beach PD. Thank you for everything that you do. Bless you, because it's very, very important. That's the real work. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councilmember Pierce. Since Councilwoman Price had mentioned some of the organizations, I'll mention that the Long Beach Police Chiefs Women Advisory Group, and that works with a variety of partners, and they include, of course, Interval House, Sukasa, the Women's Shelter of Long Beach, the Long Beach Human Trafficking Task Force, the YWCA of Greater Los Angeles, California State University Long Beach, the Legal Aid Foundation, the Long Beach Department of Health and Human Services, the Long Beach Trauma Recovery Center, End of Use, and Safe Long Beach are all involved in this great work. Councilmember Pierce.
Thank you, Mayor. And I want to echo the sentiments of my colleague. I want to thank all of you guys for the dedication and the commitment to be there with people. I mentioned last year, and I'll mention again, that I lost both my mother and my grandmother to domestic violence. And so I, at the heart, understand what trauma does, what PTSD is like for not only those that are experiencing the direct violence, whether it's emotional violence or physical violence, but that it has a lasting effect on people. And so knowing that you guys are there as kind of first responders is really important, and I really cherish the work that you do, and know that when we talk about domestic violence, it's often in a home, which is our place that is the toughest to overcome the fear to talk to somebody and recognize that somebody that they love is hurting them. And that the more that we can talk about those realities and those personal stories is the more that we'll be able to get people to come forward and talk. I know personally how hard it is to share those situations, and even if it's scratching the surface, to have people continually say that, well, maybe that's not your experience, or maybe you're overreacting, or maybe you shouldn't do that. There's a lot of reasons why people don't speak up, and I think today we would be amiss if we didn't talk about that fear. In celebrating your guys' work, we have to be able to educate our neighbors and our family members that they can talk in private, they can break the silence, they can talk in public, and that even if there's going to be naysayers that say you're not a victim or you're overreacting, that we know that that pain runs deep and that it affects people's livelihood and their mental health. And so thank you. I look forward to continuing to partner with you guys in meaningful ways, as much as doing trainings with organizations and industries to talk about how we really support people in having the courage to break that silence. So and thank you everybody for your commitment.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gonzalez.
I'd just like to thank each of you too across many different agencies in the city of Long Beach. I think we are doing a fantastic job when it comes to the issue of domestic violence. It's great to see both men and women engaged in this discussion because it affects all of us. And I love to see just such collaboration each year. And I know my office would love to continue partnering with each of you. And I personally give to this issue every single month because I know how important it is, not only for the men and women that are affected, but their children. And as a mother, it's just heartbreaking to hear a lot of the stories when children are really affected when it comes to this issue. So thank you very much again.
Thank you, Councilmember Urenga.
Thank you, Mayor, and I want to thank all of you for the wonderful work you do. In another life, I had a friend who used to work for Sukasa, and so I got to assist her in some of the cases that she had in helping women get their feet back on the ground and renew their lives. My wife, while she was here on the city council, also was very supportive of Interval House and Sukasa, and always talked about her mother and the abuse that she withstood at the hands of her ex-husband. And she suffered quietly and bravely, and she was able to break the breakaway from her husband and had a great life after that. So you guys, you changed lives, you saved lives, and I want to thank you very much for doing that.
Thank you, and Vice Mayor Richardson.
Thank you. I wanted to just chime in and offer my support and encouragement to you and the entire coalition I see assembled here. It's you know, I see men and women, I see people of all different races and backgrounds. People know that this issue is deeply cultural, right? Sometimes you have to have people who you can identify with to give you that support and encouragement to be able to have a breakthrough and change the circumstance. You know, I'm sure everybody on this council knows someone or has had an experience that is familiar to them, and so it's important that these conversations come out. So you have my support. I mean, I'm a father of 2 daughters, so obviously, I understand it's every 9 seconds a woman in the United States is abused. So this is everybody's issue, and we should continue to support you. So thank you for taking leadership on that.
Thank you, Councilman Andrews.
Yes, thank you. I also would like to give my, note to every one of you out there, because I realize what, here in this country, and I think any male or female that would really put themselves upon, physical violence upon another, you have to understand that that individual would do something like that. You have to understand that they couldn't like themselves very much, because that's what it all starts about. When you put your hands on anyone, male or female, you take a look at that individual who did that, and you will say that they didn't have a lot of life for oneself. So I see you individuals here. I know you love yourself and you love what you're doing, and I want to give you all, appreciation of what you've done here, not only for the city of Long Beach, but this reaches out all over to let people know there's still something we're going to have to work with and do a great job with. Thank you guys again so much for what you're doing.
Thank you, Councilman Mungo.
I just want to echo the comments of my colleague. Excellent work. Thank you for all you do.
Okay, thank you. With that, thank you again, and we'll do a picture. Let's give them all a round of applause. Thank you. And we have a second presentation tonight, which is on National Suicide Prevention Week. We have Lauren Walton, who is going to say a few words.
Good evening. It's an honor, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Dr. Lauren Walton, and I'm a proud resident of Long Beach. I'm a proud Kaiser Permanente physician for the last 17 years, and my practice is in Downey. I'm an addiction psychiatrist. But today, on October 10th, World Mental Health Day, I'm here to speak with my hat as the board president for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, the Greater LA chapter, which includes Long Beach all the way up to Ventura County. So the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, AFSP, is a 30-year-old organization that is founded in research, advocacy, and resources for those who are affected by suicide. Suicide has reached a crisis in this country, and it's a major public health issue. So I thank you for the opportunity to speak on it. It is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. And for those ages 10 through 34, it's the second leading cause of death. So our young people are affected, and we need to talk about it. In addiction medicine and in mental health, we talk about the taboo and the stigma of mental illness. Talk saves lives, and we have to break the silence. Just like we were talking about domestic violence, and I applaud all of your efforts. We do a wonderful job in Long Beach. We have to talk about suicide as well. So the statistics say that about 90% of people who, at the time of their demise, are suffering from a mental health condition. Mental health and depression are treatable. Therefore, suicide is preventable. So we have to focus on treatment, and we have to talk about these taboo subjects, because once we talk about them, people can then break that silence and get the help that they need. So I want to talk about afsp.org. That's where you'll find information on advocacy, on resources for people who have lost folks, for people who are in the struggle with mental illness themselves. We do free education in schools and in communities. So I definitely want to bring that to Long Beach. We have 7 walks that we do in the greater Los Angeles area. We have 2 walks coming up. They're called Out of the Darkness walks. There's a walk on October 21st in Santa Monica, afsp.org. You can register, come out, and learn more about what we can do. We can be the voice for suicide prevention. There's a second walk November 4th in Pasadena. But it would be my vision to bring a walk to Long Beach at some point. And AFSP envisions a world where there are no more suicides. So that is what we're working toward. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And Councilmember Pierce.
Yes, I want to thank you so much for the work that you do. I've lost my mother to suicide, and in my district, in my first 6 months in office, I believe we had 4 public suicides alone in my district. So my staff is going to come down and connect with you, and we definitely want to bring some of the events that you're doing to Long Beach and some of the awareness. I know our health department is also working on an education campaign as well. So thank you very much for that.
I love it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I'll come up and do this too. Just give her a round of applause for her work. Okay, if I can get a motion for items 5 through 16, which is basically the consent calendar, and 29, which is also consent. 4 has been removed, so basically the consent calendar minus number 4. There's a motion in a second. Public comment on consent. Seeing none, please cast your votes.
Motion carries.
Okay, great. So now we'll go into we're going to move, item 4 will be the first item, and of course after the hearings. So we'll begin, go through hearings 1 through 3, then we're going to do consent item 4, and then the regular agenda. Okay, starting with public comment. So hearing item number 1.
Report from Economic Development, recommendation to receive supporting documentation into the record, conclude the public hearing, and adopt a resolution.
So now what they're doing is they're putting public comment towards the end.
Parking and business improvement area assessment
Oh,
for the period of October 1st, 2017 through September 30th, 2018, District 3 and 4.
Mr. Modica?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Staff report will be given by Eric Romero from the Economic Development Department.
Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council, this item is the annual approval of the East Anaheim Street Parking and Business Improvement Area Annual Ongoing Assessment. On September 19, 2017, the City Council approved a resolution granting approval of the annual report and set today's date for the public hearing. The recommended action on this item continues the assessment for another year. There are no proposed changes to the basis of assessment nor significant changes in proposed activity. Therefore, staff requests that the City Council receive the supporting documentation into the record, approve the resolution, and continue the levy assessment, and authorize the city manager to extend the agreement for 1 additional year. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Is there any public comment on this hearing? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. We will bring it back behind the rail. Councilmember Supernaw.
Thank you for the report, and I support this. And for those of you who might be confused about the name, the East Anaheim Street Business Association is also known as Zephyria, and I think at their next meeting they'll decide which name they're going to for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Price.
Totally support this item and this organization. Great work to our entire team for the support that you give this business improvement district. They're fantastic and have a really unique number of businesses within this bid, which makes them really special. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Andrews.
Yes, I also support this item, and congratulations, Councilman Supernaw, for doing a great job in the area there.
Fantastic. Seeing no further council comments, members, please cast your vote. And I'm a yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Let's have hearing number 2, please.
Report from Development Services, recommendation to receive supporting documentation into the record, conclude the public hearing, and adopt a resolution adopting mitigated negative declaration, and deny the appeal from Warren Blosowski representing the Long Beach citizens for fair development, and uphold the Planning Commission's decision to approve a site plan review, standards variance, and conditional use permit for construction of 3 65-foot high, 44,500 square foot buildings for a 300 megawatt battery storage facility on the Alamitos Generating Station property located at 690 North Studebaker Road in the Southeast Area Development and Improvement Plan Area, District 3.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager.
Yes, I believe an oath is required for this item.
Okay, if there's an oath, Madam Clerk, can you administer the oath?
Witnesses, please stand. Do you and each of you solemnly state that the testimony you may give in the cause now and pending before this body shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Thank you. Mr. Modica.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. For the staff report, we will have a presentation from Linda Tatum, our Planning Bureau Manager, and Carrie Ty, our current Planning Officer.
I'd like to turn this item over to Carrie Ty, who will do the staff presentation, but I'd just like to acknowledge the support and assistance that Carrie received on this project from the project planners, Scott Kinsey and Alexis Oropeza. Carrie?
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Garcia and the City Council. Before you tonight is an appeal of the Planning Commission's decision to adopt a mitigated negative declaration and approve a site plan review, standards variance, and conditional use permit for a battery storage project at the AES site. There's a PowerPoint presentation on the screen. And so just a quick description of the site. The project site is located at the existing Alamitos Generation Station site east of Studebaker Road, south of the 22 freeway, and west of the San Gabriel River.
I don't give you to talk to him like that. Shame on you. You're a clown.
I will note that the site is large enough that it actually goes off the stream, and the southern portion of the site is actually in the coastal zone. However, you'll see from the red portion on the north, that none of that is within the coastal zone. The property directly to the north of the site, just for context, is the Southern California Edison Switchyard. And then the site entrance is just south of the 22 eastbound on-ramp there. There's a signalized intersection that leads into a guarded gate entry. The site is not open to the general public, and it is guarded 24 hours a day. So just some context on the existing structures on the site. Here are some photographs of the site, and the upper left photo is one of the generating units. It is approximately 160 feet tall. The upper right photo is from the eastern edge of the project site looking west towards Studebaker Road. And basically the parking lot here shows where the proposed buildings would be. The lower right photo is from the project site looking over north to the switchyard, and then the lower left, the lower right looks at the units, and the lower left is standing from the southern edge of the project site, basically in front of that generating unit, looking north toward the switchyard. The three proposed buildings total 44,550 square feet each. They would be constructed, like I mentioned, just south of the switchyard there. So you see them up here on the screen. The building closest to Studebaker Road would be set back over 300 feet from Studebaker Road. The buildings are 50 feet tall, but on the rendering you can see there's a sloping element, and that results in the maximum building height at the front of the buildings at 65 feet tall. There would be associated landscaping and site improvements, and there are also existing parking areas on the site that would accommodate for the buildings. And it is anticipated that the buildings will take about 5 employees to maintain. So just some quick building elevations here. The building elevations are on the screen. They're also in your agenda packet. The buildings are designed in a modern aesthetic with clean lines and primarily neutral colors. The color scheme reflects the AES sort of color branding, if you will. And while the buildings have no windows and generally resemble basically data server buildings, there is significant architectural articulation that has been incorporated to ensure that there is even some visual interest despite the significant setbacks from the road. So there are several entitlements that are required for this application, and just a little bit of clarification. This project is only for the buildings and only for battery storage. That is regulated under the city's zoning regulations. Power generation is regulated by the California Energy Commission, which is a state agency. And then power distribution is regulated by the California Public Utilities Commission. And so that's why the request is only for the buildings and only for the battery storage. The 3 entitlements are the site plan review approval for the construction of the buildings. The standards variance would be to allow the 3 65-foot tall buildings because the CDIP, which is the Southeast Area Development Improvement Plan, has an overall allowable height of 35 feet, even though the sub-area is zoned industrial, and industrial is allowed 60 feet in the rest of the city. And then a conditional use permit is approval is required for battery storage facilities because they are considered gas, electric, and sanitary services. In terms of environmental review, an initial study and a mitigated negative declaration were prepared in accordance with the California Environmental Quality Act. That document was circulated twice, the first in the fall of 2016 and the second in the summer of this year, 2017, due to project and architectural changes, namely to the building height, because in working with the city, the applicant incorporated a more defining architecture onto the building. As a result of the recirculation, there were comment letters received, 3 of them to be specific, and staff did provide supplemental information regarding the topics received in the comment letters. Those were presented to the Planning Commission and also in the City Council packet. In terms of public noticing, I wanted to give this some attention because there is a distinct detail here. The public noticing consisted of the standard 750-foot radius mailing to property owners and occupants, as well as nearby neighborhood groups. However, the Long Beach Municipal Code requires that for all building height variances, story poles be put up. Now, there are existing overhead power lines and also regulatory limitations that prevented putting the placement of story poles on the site in its existing condition. So therefore, in consultation with the city attorney's office as well as the applicant's regulatory agencies, visual simulations showing the building height from different vantage points were provided, and we mailed those to the radius as well as posted that on site on posters. How's that happen? So on August 3rd, 2017, the Planning Commission conducted a public hearing, heard public testimony, and voted to adopt mitigated negative declaration for the project as well as approve the project. Within the 10-day appeal period on August 8th, Warren Blazowski of the Long Beach Citizens for Fair Development filed an appeal citing the inappropriate use of the mitigated negative declaration, and also that an environmental impact report should be prepared for impacts to wetlands and the coastal zones. So with that, I did want to mention that, reiterate that the environmental was prepared in accordance with the California Environmental Quality Act, and as a result of the initial study, it was found that the project with mitigation would not have significant impacts to the environment, and that's why the mitigated negative declaration was prepared. There is a mitigation monitoring and reporting program that accompanies the documents for the project's approval, and therefore staff finds that the appeal does not have merit, and with that recommends the City Council adopt a resolution to adopt the mitigated negative declaration, deny the appeal, and also uphold the Planning Commission's decision to approve the project. Thank you, and that concludes staff's presentation. I would like to mention that the city's environmental consultant is with us, and I know the applicant is here, and the appellant is here as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So the applicant is here. You have an opportunity to come forward, and you have a reasonable amount of time to add to the discussion. So would you like to provide comments?
Vice Mayor.
The applicant doesn't get an opportunity to speak before the appellant? Okay, well, let's start with the appellant. Thank you. So let's have 10 minutes.
Vice Mayor, I think Mr. Wilsowski came in after the oath was provided, so we can
let's do it.
Do you solemnly state that the testimony you may give in the cause now pending before this body shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I will.
Thank you, Mr. Wilsowski. Let's have 10 minutes up for the...
I'd like 3 minutes to rebut as well.
Don't go running this.
Well, let's start with the comments, and then the applicant gets to rebut, since you speak first.
Yeah, but at the last appeal hearing, the mayor allowed short rebuttal time. I'm fine with 10 minutes plus 3. I don't think I'll even use all of it.
Okay. So right, you mean you want
10
to
minutes
give it all
now.
right now? 13 minutes at
10 now and 3 if there's anything that staff says that I might have objections.
Mr. Surrey, see the term. Okay, that's fine.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Go for it.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, and City Council. My name is Warren Blazowski, Long Beach Citizens for Fair Development. I just wanted to give a little context to our appeal. It's a pretty interesting climate here in Long Beach around the land use issues. It's, I guess, an exciting time to be a politician. We've got standing room only town halls across town that the newspaper reports are being taken over by liberal citizen groups. So I think that's probably exciting for the council, Mr. Mayor, and it's also exciting for us as environmental community activists to see this upswelling of community involvement.
Are they really protecting the environment?
There's a term known as the urban growth machine. Some smart guys, scholars, Malach and Logan, wrote in their book, Urban Fortunes. And basically the idea is that capital seeks to get the maximum possible profit from land. Because in a city like Long Beach, the land is the most important commodity in terms of how you can get profit. So the developer is looking for the highest exchange value. But the residents of the city we see the city in a different way. We see the city in how it's used and how it can better our lives. And
there's no conflict.
So we know on the national level, the government's not going to help us on the national level. And so really cities are the last bastion of progressive politics. And so that's why we bring this appeal before you tonight. I sent you all a letter today from our council, Coast Law Group, and I'd like to just briefly run through this. This project has significant impact, and CEQA calls for an environmental impact report when there's significant impacts. Also, this project is going to affect the views in the area. The developers' renderings are not to scale, and really, in the absence of the story poles that are part of the city code and now have been waived by the Planning Commission, really it doesn't give the citizens an opportunity to see how these 70 to 75 foot buildings in the CDIP area where there's a 35-foot commercial height limit, so a solid 40 feet over the height limit, how that conditional use variance helps Long Beach. Also, I think the biggest problem with this project is not battery storage itself, but it's the location of this battery tower. This battery tower is the largest battery array that will be deployed anywhere in the world, the largest one. And so, you know, Los Angeles County has other areas, quote unquote wasteland areas that are better suited for this battery tower. If you go ahead and look at the figure on the screen, you can see that the property and the project site are less than a mile away from the Los Cerritos wetlands, less than 500 feet away from the Los Cerritos channel, directly bordering the San Gabriel River. And if you look at that neighborhood there, I think that's the hole, right, between Loins and Studebaker, you've got hundreds of homes right there across the street from this 90,000 gallons of lithium ion. 90,000 gallons. Let's think about the Samsung Note 5. When Samsung came out with that phone, you couldn't bring 1 milliliter of it on an airplane. Everyone heard about it. You couldn't bring a Samsung Note on an airplane. And they want to put 90,000 gallons of that between our wetlands, between the rivers.
That's about a plane. Big difference.
It's not a good place for this. Furthermore, there's never been a fire study that's been done on a battery array this size. So even the fire departments and the fire hazard consultants don't know how to put out a fire that's caused by this size lithium-ion batteries. They did some smaller testing. I've submitted those quotations in my letter, and it was very difficult to put these lithium-ion fires out. Also, lithium-ion fires release toxic gases, toxic chemicals.
So do liberals.
And when I objected to this project at this site at the Planning Commission, I noted that it was the same day as a budget hearing, the same week as a budget hearing in this body, and there was no additional money being allocated to the fire department. And so your staff responded to that in their staff report saying, oh, Long Beach has 21 or 23 fire stations, and we're also part of the local joint fire authority, and so other cities will come help us put out the fire when this inevitably happens on this battery array. All it can take is some storm surge like we saw in Houston, like we saw in Puerto Rico, a couple feet over to get into the electronics of this building, and once the cooling system goes out, you can easily have a meltdown. It's not a nuclear meltdown, but it's a lithium-ion meltdown. It releases toxic chemicals, and I ask you to have you consulted with your fire chief to ask him if he knows how to deal with 90,000 gallons of toxic, flammable lithium ions and the gases it releases. It releases hydrofluoric acid as a gas. That's the same chemical that the residents in Torrance were fighting against at the refinery there.
Not me.
So that's what the potential fire damage can happen if there's some type of failure in the cooling system that's needed to keep these batteries cool all the time. So what's the big picture? The big picture is this parcel and this property are part of the wetlands. They might not be officially part of the wetlands complex, But go ahead and look at this map on the screen. You've got the Los Cerritos Channel on one side, the San Gabriel River on the other side, and the wetlands right across the street. So just because 75 years of bad decision-making were made on our precious water...
I'm like typing, dude. Come on.
Thank you, we'll give you 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Stephen O'Kane. I'm with AES. I'm Director of Sustainability and Compliance. Thank you, Vice Mayor and Council members, for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I did have a quick couple of slides prepared. I'm not sure if you'll be able to get those up. I don't want to go through a point-by-point rebuttal. You've had all the written material. We've been through this at Planning Commission. Staff has done an excellent job of detailing the...
So we had a green freak and now we have the business mind.
The mitigation measures that are in place and why an EIR is not required for this project and the mitigated ag deck would be. But I would like to give you a little more background and context to exactly what this energy storage project is. And what this project means, what it'll do for the city, our electrical grid, and the state. The AES Alamitos Battery Energy Storage Project is truly the definition of a sustainable energy project. The entire purpose of this development is to enable greater integration of clean renewable energy into the electrical grid that serves Long Beach, and will result in the retirement of existing inefficient fossil fuel generation and pave the way for the eventual demolition and removal of the old power plant on Studebaker Road.
It'll get interesting when people start speaking during public comment, so just hang
and will
on.
result in greater quality of life for those residents living closest to the plant. I brought with me only 2 images to share with you to try and demonstrate the amazing transformation we can effect at the AES Alamitos Generating Station, which is located at one of the few eastern entrances to our city. What we saw before us was a two-scale photo simulation of the proposed energy storage buildings, which would be 50 feet in height of the building, 65 to the top of that architectural feature, so a little bit lower than what the appellant stated there. And the next slide here is units 1 and 2 at Alamitos. These are the 2 units that are right at the entrance to the plant, closest to the Studebaker Road, and represent the same amount of generating capacity of those 3 buildings. We can take 3 quiet, innocuous buildings, barely visible from a public vantage point, with no stacks, no emissions, essentially 0 water use other than a couple of restrooms, and we can replace that. Excuse me. We could replace 350 megawatts of gas-fired generation, which require us to store 75,000 gallons of oil there, 20,000 gallons of aqueous ammonia for pollution control, 3,000 megawatt hours of lead-acid battery. That's all what's there right now. And so we would replace it with something much less hazardous. And we would, these units emit up to 1.6 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent per year. A battery energy storage system emits 0. And if anybody lives within a few miles of this plant, occasionally these 60-year-old units, they get a system fault, and it might be a little bit noticeable when we have to release steam. That kind of noise will also be completely eliminated with the use of 3 buildings to provide the electrical service to this area. This project and others like it is critical to expanding our reliance on clean, renewable energy and reducing our dependence on fossil fuels. In Southern California, we're blessed with an abundance of solar power, but in order to harness that power, to use it when we most need it, in the evenings and at night, as opposed to when it's generated during the daytime, we've got to store it. And an energy storage system is one of those critical components that is going to help us manage our grid much more effectively. You've also heard that this project, or battery energy, described as a bit of new, unproven technology. I will use the term transformative technology, but certainly not new and unproven. AES has been operating lithium-ion battery storage units since 2008 and have constructed systems across the U.S. and the world. Today we have systems operating in the UK, the Netherlands, Philippines, Chile, West Virginia, Ohio, Indiana, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Arizona, and California. And in fact, just south of there earlier this year, 120 megawatt hour system was commissioned for San Diego Gas and Electric, which is currently the largest system in the world. The Alamitos project would be the next one on that list, but I doubt we'll keep that title. This is new technology that's being implemented and embraced around the world in electrical grid systems, where in order for us to clean up our grid, reduce emissions, reduce water consumption, and reduce noise. I know it's a bit strange getting really excited about batteries and power generation, but I hope you feel some of that energy, part of the pun. And this really will be transformative for the views for the city, the noise, the reduction in emissions, and the greater integration of renewable energy. So I urge you to take staff's recommendation and deny this appeal of the Planning Commission's decision. I thank you, and I'm available for any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. We're going to go into the appellant does have an opportunity to rebuttal. So we're going to give the appellant, Mr. City Attorney, I think we said 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. AES does not care about the environment. Okay? AES is one of the largest coal burning companies in the world.
Coal is good.
Okay? So they're disingenuous when they say that. They're also disingenuous when they show you a picture of the old plant that's going to get torn down and fails to let you know that a new one's going up right next to it.
Freak.
That's gas-fired. So AES made a mistake, and they put a lot of research and energy into these battery towers, and now they're trying to dig themselves out of that hole at Long Beach's expense. Don't let AES be the 20-teens Enron at the expense of Long Beach citizens. They don't care about renewable energy. They just care about their bottom line. They have this site between the wetlands and the San Gabriel River, and they're going to put thousands and thousands of toxic, flammable gases and liquids on this site. So once again, I urge you to simply approve this appeal, deny the conditional use permit, and let them go get an environmental impact report so that the citizens, the homeowners that live in the hole across the street, those of us that take Studebaker Road every day, those of us that are affected by these toxic proposal on our wetlands, get a chance to enter into the environmental discussion. That's what CEQA is there for. That's what environmental reviews are for. And finally, I'm glad that the representative from AES brought up the fact that the old plant's coming down and the new plant's going up, and this battery tower is going to go up, all on the same site. They're calling it the Alamitos Energy Complex, and if there's not a better example of piecemealing under CEQA, this is it. You should not have signed an MOU to tear down the old power plant, not entered into the process for the new gas-fired power plants, and the acceptance of this battery tower. This is one project. CEQA has tiering guidelines in. These environmental reviews should have been done in a stepwise tiered manner so that this piecemealing that's happened and this wonderful, I mean, the gentleman said that the residents of the city are gonna enjoy the view of these buildings. Hardly, hardly. We want our wetlands back. The petroleum industry has run roughshod over Long Beach for long enough, and it's time for us to get our resources back. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go ahead. That concludes the appellant and the applicant comments. We're going to go to public comment now, and then we'll go back to the deliberation from the council. So is there any public comment? Now would be the time.
Very good. You know, I had not really gotten inside of that issue of the environmental aspect.
Okay, I'm going to go up. Can you record me?
Obviously, it's a problem, and we haven't done our homework. I'd feel more comfortable getting if they would sign an agreement. The gentleman who's spoken would commit to in writing that his family would live there forevermore and in succeeding generations. Obviously, we haven't done our homework, and we need to go back and look at that. That's certainly that's butt ugly. But I don't think, from what I understand, the other side is going to be any different. But it's the danger that is lurking there. And as a good faith gesture, they should have then no problem saying, okay, our CEO and the gentleman that made the presentation in writing that he and his family will live within the immediate area now and generations after. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Could I have the start when I start speaking? I've already lost 7 seconds.
Go ahead. I always let people go a few minutes, seconds after they need it. Go ahead.
Usually,
Go ahead. Ms. Cantrell, go ahead and start.
when I start talking.
Go ahead.
Good evening, Ann Cantrell. And I'd like to remind you about CEQA. There are several levels of CEQA, and one of them is a complete environmental impact report. That was not done for this project. What they did was a lesser environmental impact report, which is called a negative declaration, which means, oh, there's nothing wrong here. We don't have to mitigate anything. We'll just build this. Even though the height limit in this area is 35 feet, we're going to make it 65 feet. And I was kind of amused by the fact that the design of this roof can have future solar panels on it. If this is going to be for solar, put solar panels on it to begin with. I'm really concerned about the safety of the people not only living around this area, but on the freeways. We've just seen what happens when a fire hits a place and there's a lot of wind. Imagine what will happen if this facility catches on fire to the whole area around here. And I doubt there's a fire company near that has a 65-foot ladder to access this building. Councilmember Price, this is your district, and I know the rest of you look to the councilperson whose district these issues are in for guidance. So please, will you please protect the people not only of your district, but of all of Long Beach. And I'd like to also remind you why we have these power plants in the location they are. It's because they use the water from the San Gabriel River and the Los Olivos Channel to cool them. They are no longer allowed to use this water. And so these plants do not have to be in this location. As Mr. Wlasewski said, there's other places in California where this would be much better place to put this than in a highly populated area.
Thank you, Ms. Cantrell.
Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Anna Christensen, local resident since 1945. And in some ways, I feel like this is kind of a Groundhog Day moment. Most of you on the council and in this room are too young to remember the phrase, what's good for Westinghouse is good for America. Westinghouse built the nuclear power plant in Japan that went down during the tsunami. This is a tsunami zone just south of this area. Maybe you remember when the council came back and sat over here and the panelists presented a project for Long Beach, a liquefied natural gas facility to be located in our harbor just offshore. And as the expert talked about a firestorm that would stretch to San Diego should this particular fluid that none of us knew much about explode, our mayor passed notes about real estate to our 3rd District City Councilman. I'm looking today, Mr. West decided to leave. He was just visiting with Mr. Modica when somebody was talking about public safety. We need you. We need you to help us be safe. We need our $100,000+ salaried Long Beach Development Services to be our protectors, all right? And just for context, as the developer said, or the staff said, just for context, right just south of this amazing transformation, that's pure ad, the amazing transformation that this facility is going to occur, runs the Newport Inglewood earthquake fault line. All right, an earthquake fault line that caused the 1933 earthquake, and according to some scientists at Caltech, was triggered by a single oil well. A single little thing, or just nature. And this is a real thing. This is a fault line. Now, we're not the right messengers. It's obvious. Nobody's looking at me, except for Mr. Superno. Stacy just walked. Blasovsky, me, and Kendrell, your local environmentalists, we know that. We know we're used to it. We come here all the time, and we're consistently used to it. But every once in a while, you know, Mr. Modica, it's Chris that said that over there. It's not just Anna Christensen's opinion. It's the Coastal Commission's opinion that some things are dangerous. Why would a developer tell you something is dangerous that if he doesn't have to? That's your job to figure this out. I don't know if any of you on the council, other than Mr. Urang, who's also on the Coastal Commission, really read EIRs. But I would just ask you, you know, I know the young people. I met them the other night at a public meeting that work for Long Beach Development Services. They're nice young people and older people. These people work hard for a living, but it's not enough. It's never been enough for us in Long Beach, and that's why the city gets sued over Home Depots. And that's why we don't want to have to do that. We want you to make it right.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
My name is Arthur Schaper. I am a resident of Torrance, California. What sparked my interest to speak on this matter was for someone to make references to the upheaval regarding the Torrance refinery. And the fact is, it is a very diligent, yet small, yet loud contingent. The vast majority of residents, including myself, who have lived there for the greater part of our lives, feel no threat to our safety. And I think it's a disconcerting aspect when someone says we've had lots of people overwhelming town halls trying to scare or diminish or intimidate elected officials away from projects. And I think it's very important to keep that in mind. I am direct. I've been affected by that. Many people in our community are affected by that. I understand mitigating concerns regarding this project will affect other people in and around the LA basin here, but the fact of the matter is, it's important that we have a cool head regarding all projects. With the attitude I hear from some environmental activists, it's almost as if they wouldn't want anything built at all. So I feel compelled to make a comment about that. It bothers me when people want to use a talking point from something in my city in order to stop a project, which has followed other procedures as is needed. In Torrance, we're not big fans of the loud green lobby that essentially wants to shut down our refinery. You can be sure it will affect people in this city, as I know you have employees in the city who work in that refinery, and I'm certain that with this project, as it goes forward, you'll have more jobs, you'll have sustainable growth, you'll have an opportunity to do what's good for the environment as well as for the city. So don't allow a small contingent of loud green activists pressure you or intimidate you. It's all bark and no bite. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. I believe it's the responsibility of the city council to look after the interests of the people and the environment of Long Beach. I think that's the main priority, right? I believe a full impact report is needed for this. The guy talked about how they're minimizing the waste from the existing structure and how it's so much better than the past. We have new technology now.
I guess I'm tired of the Torrance refinery being used as a talking point.
How our technology impacts the natural environment. And so it's about finding out how the full impacts to the environment affects us, and we need a full report to do that. We can't just measure how much better we are in the past.
There are two periods for general public comment.
It's important to the environment of the people here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
But at the end of the meeting,
And, okay, we have, I'm closing the speakers list, so we have 4 speakers left in the speakers list. I'm sorry, Ms. Dawson-Harris, are you going to speak too? Okay, so 5 speakers, and the speakers list is closed. Please continue.
Hi, this is Corliss Lee, and you have my address on file. What I wanted to bring up was your business evaluation of this. Having worked in aerospace for 25 or 30 years as a manager, I went through many project reviews. In every project review, it's the same discipline. It's cost, quality, and schedule, and then you take a long, hard look at risk. And what I'm hearing here today is that we don't have our arms around the risk. There's something called a kill zone that, I haven't heard mentioned. And normally with something that has this kind of an environmental impact, you would want to know if there was
That's the same argument they make about the Torrance refinery.
Disaster, what is the kill zone? I know no one on this council would want to be responsible for looking backwards even when you're gone if suddenly this thing went down and some huge fire occurred. You need to at least ask for the EIR. Ask for the full amount of information you can get before you make this decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
It's Janet.
My name is Janet West, and I live in District 4. And I was at the Torrance City Council meeting when they discussed the explosion there and the debris that landed 10 feet from the tank that carried that chemical that I now understand is going to be at this battery tower. The most vivid thing from that meeting was a kill zone map. And it came to East Long Beach from Torrance. And I heard no one dispute that there would have been a kill zone if that tank had been breached. So I ask you to please take that into consideration and do a full of this development. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Actually, I'm going to have Ms. Emily Dawson-Harris to be next.
I am Frances Emery Dawson-Harris, and I reside in District 1. Well, this is a subject matter that's kind of beyond my level of expertise, okay, with the background that I have in nursing and other things. But I'm kind of sitting here and I'm thinking about all that took place to get here today, because there's a lot of different things that occurred for us to get here today, and I'm hearing both sides, and everyone has the right to have their opinion on the right side or the left side, so to speak. But when there was mention about other areas or a better place to put this, then I didn't hear where the other areas are. And then when I think about the future, and they speak about like electronic pulse threats, I feel comfortable that the building's contained, that in a way there's no emissions. I was kind of wondering why they didn't have any windows, but I think it's a good idea because nothing can leak out. And so I understand about the wetlands, but you really have a hard decision. Decide that you are, and I'm glad I'm not sitting on the seats right now at this moment. And I wish you the best in the course of making the decision. But I believe that I just can't see how we got here today, and it's not pretty finite which way to go in this thing. And I feel comfortable that whatever decision you make is going to be in the best interest of the city of Long Beach. And the fact that we have to have battery storage, the fact that there's reduced emissions, there's not going to be emissions, I feel comfortable on that. So I just thought I'd share that with you, and thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. And next up will be Ms. Broussard.
Thank you.
My first comment, Larry, good you filled that in. Because if the owners, this is a private company, and they'll just live on the premises, I agree. Just set a condo right up in there in the construction and commit to be there because it's that safe. The next would be an insurance policy for the range of damage. For each person that would be impacted should a crisis occur. Individual insurance policies for each family member in each house should be part of this company's commitment to this community. Emergency plans for residences, evacuation should be in place, and each house should have a copy. Risk benefit plan, monetary, because it's all going to boil down to money. So start paying the dividends now. The moment they open the plant, pay some dividends to the residents, to the community. From the moment they turn the switch, each member of the community gets paid, not because the damage has occurred, but because the fear factor, not being able to sleep. It's like the airplanes flying over. This is more damaging to the emotional life than the airplanes over their heads. You cannot hold lithium in your hand for a very long period of time without your skin starting to do something negative. So the fear factor alone, even if it's mitigated, so-called, but we don't have an environmental report, so we don't know. But even if it's not legitimate fear, pay for it because the plant's going to be real. The plant's going to be a real thing, and the fear that is presented just by having that lithium. When I heard lithium, I thought, oh, I didn't plan to speak on that, but here I am. Lithium? Okay, let's remove the monetary benefit to the city if there is any. Billionaires. A billionaire's daughter comes up with breast cancer. They say, spare no expense. Oh, doctor, spare no expense. I just want my daughter well. We're saying to this company, no environmental report do you need. We're telling them we're going to let you spare some expense. Oh, don't go through all the stuff necessary for a normal citizen to feel good about this. Put the plan up. It's going to be good? Oh, okay, well, thank you. We're going on word only? Word only. Oh, no, this is more dangerous than the airplanes flying over after 9 p.m.
Thank you, Ms. Bouchard. Next speaker, our final speaker.
Okay, I'm Karen Reeside, and I live in the 1st District. And I've actually gone to a number of the meetings hosted by the county and actually looked at the science related. You know, we all carry lithium-ion batteries in our cell phones. We carry them all around with us every day. I'm also one of those wild green environmentalists, but I like to look at what the science says. This plant is a great thing. It is going to reduce a significant amount of pollution and clean up a big environmental mess at the power station. When I was growing up, my family went to the Colorado Lagoon. And when I was in high school, I had boyfriends that surfed. One of the big issues with the lagoon and going out surfing in local facilities was the fact that the water was heated and it encouraged the growth and development of jellyfish and sharks coming up the channels. And the beaches would be blackballed and we couldn't go in the water. That was because of the heated water that was necessary to cool the gas-fired plant. I can't wait for that plant to go away. The battery-operated system is going to actually move us into the next phase and help us reach our emission goals of going to zero emissions by 2030 as a state. So there are people that do support this plant and can't get it in fast enough. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public comment. We're going to go now deliberate from the City Council. I'll start with Councilman Price.
Thank you. I want to thank the appellant and the members of the public who spoke, as well as the applicant. I'm going to ask staff a few questions regarding some of the statements that were made. First of all, are there any statements in particular? I know the appellant made a lot of statements and allegations that perhaps weren't entirely based on fact, but are there any statements in particular that were made that should perhaps be corrected in terms of the record moving forward?
Thank you, Councilwoman Price, for your questions. I jotted down several topics that I would like to just clarify. First of all, I noticed the reference to the wetlands, and I would like to clarify that the site is not in the wetlands, and in fact, in terms of measurement, whether you're measuring from the entrance or from the closest proposed building to Studebaker Road, the measurement is about 1,800 feet to 2,000 feet to the nearest point of the Los Cerritos wetlands. Second, I would also like to point out that as part of the City Council's recent approval of the CSIP, the Southeast Area Specific Plan, the site and its immediate area there between Studebaker Road and the San Gabriel River was zoned industrial. And on a side note, actually, that zoning has a height limit of 65 feet, and so based on the future zoning, the proposed height of the buildings would be in complete compliance with what the zoning is. With regard to safety, actually, let me talk about fire. With regard, the appellant mentioned the fire resources of the city and the well-known procedure of mutual aid when firefighting resources need to share jurisdictions. You know, even as we speak right now, Long Beach has a firefighter team over in Anaheim. So I would like to point out that certainly what is cited in the environmental document with regard to firefighting resources is a current and ongoing practice, and also that all new development pays into public service fees, impact fees. And so there would be development impact fees associated with new development that would pay for additional needs and services. One more note about regulations. The initial study does include a discussion about on hazardous materials, and specifically with regard to lithium-ion cells and electrolyte. Within them, there are existing regulations that any building or facility or use of batteries must comply with, and given the existing regulatory infrastructure that the business and or building must comply with, there are regulations in place to ensure the safety of battery storage as well as those who work around them. And lastly, with regard to the review of the proposed project in association with the Alamitos Energy Center, the appellant cited that this might be an example of piecemealing, and I would like to point out that this project actually is not physically connected to the generation units. Rather, it actually connects to the switch yard to store surplus energy in order to feed surplus energy back into the grid during times when extra energy is needed. This type of facility could actually go anywhere except that there was an available site and piece of land here and a convenient connection to the Southern California Edison switch yard. So those are several points that I heard. If you have any additional questions, I'd be happy to address them. Thank you.
No, and I would like to just add one other item that the appellant mentioned that was carefully looked at, and just to note that it is in compliance with all state, federal, and local requirements regarding the seismic. There are very specific building codes that address seismic structures, and due to the sensitive nature of this structure, we of course at the staff level are really concerned or careful to make sure that any facility of this type are completely compliant with all of the building codes, especially as they relate to seismic safety.
Okay, and I appreciate staff answering those questions. I think it's always good for us to have a healthy debate about projects that are being proposed for the city, but I think it's important when we have that debate that we're all operating on the same fact sheet. And so when I'm hearing things that perhaps are inconsistent with what staff has reported, I think it's important, and we have a duty to actually correct that record as we engage in the conversation. And so I appreciate that correction there. In regards to allegations or implications of any sort of increased danger to the community by virtue of the implementation of this project, is there any data or research that would suggest that there's any truth whatsoever to those allegations?
Staff is not aware of any immediate risk or danger regarding the particular type of facility that's posed here. As the applicant mentioned, this type of facility or facilities of this nature have been built in other locations around the state and around the world. However, the size of this is what makes this one extraordinary, but the size does not equate to any additional risk in terms of the technology and the type of facility that's being operated.
Okay, and that's important. I asked that question because according to some of the comments that were made, I think I and our city attorney both live in the hill zone. So I just want to make sure that that is a risk that is mitigated, if at all there. But I also want to highlight, and I think some of the comments that were made, this is a battery storage facility, not a coal mining operation. Is that correct? Because I heard some references to coal mining, and I was a little confused how that relates to the item before.
It does not relate at all. This is a battery, and it's the energy storage. They're not producing it. They are storing the energy on this facility.
Okay. Well, I want to, I'm going to be moving this forward and recommending to my colleagues that this appeal be denied. I think that it's very important to highlight a few key things that staff has already pointed out in regards to some of the factual inaccuracies in the statements made by the appellant in regards to
what did I tell everybody? They're extremists, environmental extremists, totally lying. Told you.
In regards to procedures for public safety services.
Where's the President
to this area,
Trump one?
In regards
Our
to the
president.
existing infrastructure that's already in place and what this means to it, if at all. I do want to say that, one of the comments that was made was, well, maybe the folks who are proposing this should live in the area. And although it's not relevant nor appropriate to talk about specific addresses of people who run this company, I will tell you that at the very highest levels of management, they do live in the area. And I think that says a lot when people are willing to stand by a project in such a way that they'll say they're exposing themselves to the very same risks that are being complained of. AES has thus far been an incredible community partner to the 3rd District. They have had numerous community outreach meetings with residents who live in the immediate area. Although the appellant may have been at some of them, I don't personally recall the appellant having been to them. A lot of these issues were discussed at many of the hearings, and so I think AES has gone above and beyond to try to address the concerns of the residents and some of the misinformation in regards to the potential risks. Again, this is a highly specialized area of expertise. And our city staff did a tremendous job working with the regulatory agencies and within this area of subject matter expertise to identify potential concerns and to work through them and come up with the proposal that they did. I fully support this project, and I ask my colleagues to deny the appeal and allow this project to move forward. And I thank everyone for expressing their opinions in such a respectful way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There's a motion to deny the appeal. There's a second by Councilman Austin. Councilmember Pierce? Nope. I'm sorry. So there's a motion and a second. No other council comments.
Discussion.
Members, please go ahead and cast your votes on the motion to deny the appeal.
Motion carries.
Okay, motion carries. We're moving on to hearing item 3, the last hearing, please.
Report from Development Services, recommendation to receive supporting documentation into the record, conclude the public hearing and accept statutory exemption 17-136, declare ordinance amending various sections of Title 21 of the Long Beach Municipal Code relating to accessory dwelling units, read for the first time and laid over to the next regular meeting of the City Council for final reading. Adopt a resolution directing the Director of Development Services to submit a request to the California Coastal Commission to certify an amendment to the Certified Local Coastal Program, and adopt a resolution modifying the established development impact fee structure for accessory dwelling units in accordance with the California Government Code pertaining to accessory dwelling units citywide.
Okay, before we go to this, do the questions. So right after this item, we'll go to the regular agenda, of which item 4 from the consent will be up first, and then we'll go into all the other items, okay, just for folks that asked. We have the hearing up, the last one, so I'll turn this over to staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The staff report on this item will be given by, again, Linda Tatum, our Planning Bureau Manager, and Carrie Ty, our current Planning Officer.
And at this time, I'd like to acknowledge Carrie Ty, who's our current planning officer, who will give the presentation. And this is the item that both Alexis Oropeza and Scott Kinsey participated in providing staff support. Carrie?
Thank you. Good evening, again, Mayor Garcia and City Council. This is a city-initiated ordinance pertaining to local regulations for accessory dwelling units, which, as you know, the state of California is requiring local jurisdictions to allow. And so just some brief history for the audience. So what is an accessory dwelling unit? An accessory dwelling unit is a unit that's in addition to one single-family home on a property. It may be attached or detached from the main house. Accessory dwelling units are complete units, so they are distinguished from rumpus rooms, and you may have seen detached bedrooms that might have
Janet's in the yellow
These are
shirt,
complete
and she's
units,
been fighting against
and they
this.
include separate exterior entrances, kitchen, bathing, and living facilities. Some other common terms for accessory dwelling units used over the years are second units, granny flats, in-law units, teenager units, but from here on out, we'll be referring to them as accessory dwelling units. And just to clarify, per state law, accessory dwelling units do not count as a unit for density purposes. And so some background, the first California state law addressing ADUs was enacted in 1982. A number of amendments have been made to state law over the years, 5 to be exact, and each time increasing the permissibility for ADUs and reducing local control. ADU regulations were first adopted by the city of Long Beach in 1988, and they were called secondary housing units or granny flats. So, Senate Bill 1069 and Assembly Bill 2299 were approved by the state of California last year and took effect on January 1st. And what these bills did was streamline the approval process and basically set forth development standards that cities had to approve accessory dwelling units under. So basically, if they had a set of standards, and if a unit met that, we had to approve it. So no public hearing, no conditional use permits. And they require what's called a ministerial approval, which means it's a building permit, so it's an over-the-counter or plan check, which is they submit plans to the city staff. They check them in accordance to the code, and if everything is good, there's approved with no discretion. Long Beach's existing 1988 granny flat ordinance was deemed null and void because it was no longer in compliance with the new state legislation.
Oh, brother.
And then until adoption of a new local ordinance, only state law applies, which means we are required to approve them under state law. So state law does allow cities to adopt their own ordinances to refine the state regulations. There are some things we can do, there are some things we can't do. But local ordinances can designate a lot size for properties that qualify for an ADU. Local ordinances can specify the size of the ADU. We can refine processing requirements and require covenants and the like. And also, we had to look at our impact fees to ensure that the impact fees that we were charging were consistent. And one of the overarching goals is that the ordinance would be consistent with state law, but also be customized to Long Beach in accordance with the character of the neighborhoods, with the city's policies, the city's general plan, and the city's housing element. And so the one overarching goal is certainly to allow additional housing production. So some of the differences between the state and proposed local regulations. The state law mandates that cities allow ADUs in single-family zoning districts, but allows cities to permit them in multifamily districts. Our proposed local ordinance would allow ADUs in 17 residential zones, and that includes single and multifamily zones, but only on properties developed with a single-family residence. So for example, a property already developed with 2 units would not be eligible. The city can also designate areas in the city where ADUs are allowed. So the proposed local ordinance designates that areas within the designated parking impacted areas or the coastal zone cannot have an ADU unless they provide parking. And I'll talk about parking because there are provisions in state law that govern how and when the city can require parking. What the hell's he doing here? And so just a little tangent here on the parking impacted area. That was established by the City Council in 1988, and it was established based on on-street parking conditions that were found to negatively impact the health, safety, and welfare of the community, as well as impeding and obstructing traffic flow. It was last updated as part of the mobility element in 2013. The proposed local ordinance for ADUs would prohibit ADUs in the parking impacted area unless parking is provided. Then to the coastal zone. Because the state law mandating approval of ADUs is a state law, it does not automatically supersede the Coastal Act, which is also state law, but it does specify that we cannot conduct public hearings in order to approve them. The city's local coastal program, which all development must comply with, seeks to maximize access along the coast, and therefore staff finds that development of ADUs without on-site parking, that has the potential to conflict with the policy. And therefore, staff is proposing that in order to allow ADUs in the coastal zone, that parking would be required. I would also like to add that in terms of processing requirements, most development along the coast requires some form of a local coastal development permit that requires a public hearing. And the proposed ordinance would add ADUs to a list of categorical exclusions to coastal permits so that a public hearing would not be allowed, and that would allow us to comply with state law. So moving to some of the proposed development standards, the table on the screen compares what the standard is, and development standards are lot size, lot width, setbacks, height, floor area ratio, lot coverage, which all in totality govern how much building can go on a property. If you look at the column for state law, you'll see that generally there's no standard for most of these categories, with the exception of the side and rear setbacks for certain instances. The proposed city standard would specify that any ADU must comply with the development standards of the zoning district, and I would point out that specifically that any property qualifying for an ADU has to be a minimum of 4,800 square feet in lot area, and it has to be at least 27 feet wide. Also, I'd like to point your attention to building height. Currently, the state is silent on building height. The proposed local ordinance would designate that any proposed ADU would have a maximum of 2 stories or 25 feet. And one thing that's important to understand is that these development standards are used in totality. None of them are used singularly. And so then I'll take us onto unit size. So the state law allows for an ADU to be 50% of the existing living area of the primary dwelling with a maximum of 1,200 square feet. So for example, if somebody has a 2,000 square foot home, they could propose an ADU of 1,000 square feet. A detached one could be up to 1,200 square feet regardless of what the primary unit size is. So the proposed city standard would require that ADUs basically be proportional to what is on the lot already. So any ADU, attached or detached, could only be 50% of the living area of the primary dwelling, or 1,000 square feet, whichever is less. And so if somebody had a 1,000 square foot house, they could have up to a 500 square foot ADU, and that's only if they meet the setbacks, the lot coverage, and the floor area ratio of that particular zone. There is one exception, and that is for properties that have a primary dwelling of less than 1,280 square feet, and in those cases, an ADU of 640 square feet could be constructed. The reason for the 640 square feet is that is what our current 1988 granny flat ordinance allows now, and it was deemed to be a unit that was large enough to ensure livability. And so for properties that have a
primary unit that's a bit smaller, it would at least allow a second unit that's livable. So now I'm back to parking. State law prohibits cities from requiring parking for ADUs under 5 conditions. And the most significant condition for the city of Long Beach is any property located within 1/2 mile of public transit. There are other conditions, but I'm going to focus on that one because on the map in front of you, colored in gold, is the area of the city that is served within 1/2 mile of a transit stop. And that is overwhelmingly, it's an overwhelming part of the city. And so as part of the proposed local ordinance, there would be no parking required for ADUs, with the exception of the parking impacted area and the coastal zone. Now, in those areas, the ADU parking requirements would be 1 space for ADUs that are 640 square feet or smaller, and it would be 2 spaces for anything over 640 square feet. One important element of this is that replacement parking for the primary unit is required. And that means if you have a primary unit and you have a 2-car garage, and you legally convert that 2-car garage, you must replace those 2 spaces somewhere else on the property outside of required setback areas, but it can be outside of a garage and it can also be tandem, and that's what the last bullet
Steve Napolitano is now the chief of staff for Stacey Rose Mungo.
Is about. In
Stacey
other words,
Mungo
replacement parking
is
does
the
not
only
need to be in a new
Republican
garage.
on the Long Beach City Council.
I did mention
Dale
that
Stabenow,
covenants are
Supernow,
required for ADUs. One
is
of
an
the
independent.
reasons is that accessory dwelling unit is supposed to function exactly as it's called, accessory to a single-family property, and in order to ensure that the character of single-family properties and single-family neighborhoods retains its integrity and remains intact, covenants are required for properties proposing an ADU. Covenants would require that the property be owner-occupied, that the ADU cannot be sold separately from the primary dwelling, that there is continued availability of the on-site parking that is required, prohibiting short-term rentals, and by short-term that means 30 days, and restricting the size and status of the ADU. And that would prevent somebody from coming back years from now to add on to an ADU that has already been built to the maximum allowed size. With regard to development impact fees, staff is proposing to adjust the city's development impact fees to be commensurate with the size of ADUs. ADUs are typically smaller than a traditional home, and the state does not allow the charging of impact fees that is disproportional. So in other words, charging the same impact fee for a home that's 2,000 square feet versus charging that same fee for something that's 500 square feet. And so staff is proposing the adoption of an interim fee resolution with fees that are specifically sized for ADUs to ensure that those fees are proportional. The Planning Commission recommended that the City Council adopt the proposed zoning code amendment on July 6th. As part of the Planning Commission's recommendation, they did ask that the ADUs be a maximum of 1,000 feet, as opposed to the originally proposed 1,200 square feet, and also recommended that that second parking space for ADUs over 600 square feet in the coastal zone and parking impacted areas be increased to 2 spaces. Public notification was published in accordance with the Long Beach Municipal Code. That means it was published in the newspaper, also posted at the libraries, and sent out to an interest list that we have been keeping for the past 10 months or so, maybe more, maybe a year now. And we received 4 letters of opposition. The letters of opposition I received 4. First letter stated that maximum size of ADUs should be 600 square feet. The second and third letters objected to the change of zoning to allow multiple residents on one property. And the fourth letter was regarding how ADUs would affect equestrian zones. So with that, staff is recommending that the City Council adopt the zoning ordinance which adopts the local standard for ADUs as proposed by the Planning Commission, and that does include the zoning code amendment and local coastal program amendment, which will need to be certified by the Coastal Commission. and also modifies the established development impact fee structure for ADUs. And that concludes staff's presentation, and we can answer questions.
Thank you very much. We are going to go ahead and do public comment first, and then we'll do, or I know this hearing is a little bit different. Should we just do the council first and then public comment like a regular item? Mr. City Attorney, can we do that? Thank you. Councilwoman Price.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, staff, for this presentation. I think sometimes when issues are presented by staff, people assume that staff is the entity that's initiating the concept or the idea. And I think in this situation, it's really important to point out that staff is reacting to state legislation and really has done an excellent job of trying to mitigate the impacts of that state-imposed legislation. So I want to be very clear and appreciative of staff for making that effort. Having said that, I think the current proposal still has some opportunities for improvement in terms of the concerns that have been raised by residents regarding the impacts of the additional density in some of the proposed neighborhoods. So just a couple of things. I support, well, let me just go to the staff report. So on page 3 of the staff report, you outline the development impact fees. And I think this is a really, I'm going to be honest. If this has been part of projects that we have approved in the past, we certainly have not spent as much time talking about them, this particular impact fee, as we should. It is absolutely true that when we add density, we have a whole host of new needs, increased needs for public services, such as police, fire, public works, parks, rec, and marine, as a result of the increased density. And so I'm happy to see that we're specifically talking about the development impact fees here. And I'm wondering if you could maybe use this opportunity to talk to us a little bit about what those fees are and how it is that we can ensure that the funds that are obtained from the development impact fees, whether it's on a development of a residential property or the development of a commercial property, that those funds are routed directly into the departments that are now needing to service the additional impacts of the additional density.
Certainly. Thank you for that question, Councilwoman Price. The way that the development process works is that when applicants come to our counter and pay their fees, they essentially pay at a central location. And we have a computerized system for issuing permits, and as a part of that system, the fees that are allocated to each of the departments, and you briefly summarized those. It includes the school fees, the police and fire safety fees, the public works traffic impact fees, and the open space or park fees. Those are all built into the system, and when the applicant pays their fees, the system essentially codes in those fees, and those fees go directly to those departments. They do not go into our department's budget, the Development Services Department. Even though we collect the fees, they are coded and go directly into the budgets of the other or the appropriate departments.
Okay. And how long have we been doing that?
It has been quite a while, a long time. I would say more than 20 years, 20 plus years.
Do you have any sort of estimation of how much of a department's budget is based on development impact fees?
I'll take a crack at that. It doesn't pay for it does not pay for operating costs. So because they are based on new development, they are also regulated by state law, and so we use them for basically new services. We're not able to use them for current services, but if we're, for example, doing park projects, we would look at increasing open space to allow for additional opportunities rather than just funding maintenance for an existing park, for example. It is not a significant portion of their budget, but it is definitely a very needed funding source to plan for additional police, either equipment or facilities that need to be improved to handle additional police officers, those types of examples.
I think that's fantastic, and moving forward, I expect to ask a lot more questions about that when we move forward with development projects, because it really, when I was reading this item and studying up on this item, it really was when it came to light for me that, you know, whether it's building a new station or a new substation or enhancing the capacity of a station that we have, or building more open space, as Mr. Modica said, whatever the case may be, development projects and additional density should go hand in hand with those new services for the residents. There's got to be something that makes it worthwhile for people to have to deal with the increased density, and so I'm glad to see that we have this development impact fee, and like I said, it's probably just me who was not plugged into it prior to reading this item and getting familiar with this item, but I expect to be a lot more plugged into it now, so thank you for educating us on that. So I support the covenants that are outlined in the proposed ordinance, or the actions of the Planning Commission. I would like to ask my colleagues to approve this item with the following changes. I'd like to reduce the square footage that is allowable from 1,000, which is currently proposed, to 800 square feet, or 50%, whichever is less, which is the same exact language as we see on page 2 of the item, the staff report, but instead of the 1,000 square feet, I'd ask that it be 800 square feet. I'd like to increase the open space requirement from 25% to 30%. And beyond that, I'm open to hearing from my colleagues on what other changes they'd like to see to this, but in my opinion, these changes are at a minimum what would be required to make the additional density something that's bearable for our residential communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Member Pierce?
Yes. Thank you, staff. I wanted to thank you for doing a great job presenting all the details. Obviously, being in a parking impacted area, the details on parking was really important for me. I had a couple of residents reach out and also did my research on the reducing the square footage and adding the green space to 30%. Something I definitely support, and so I want to thank you all for this work and thank my colleague for making that motion.
Thank you. Councilman Andrews?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I think the state is created a lot, promoting, more housing opportunities for the city. It can only exercise some of, the directions as how this law is administered. I think our focus should be on enforcement of the neighborhood protection under this law that provides, prevent them from being rented out short term.
Yeah.
I would urge my colleagues not to, create limitations in sizes of setbacks, and would be trying to discourage these, accessory drilling units from happening. I think everyone can agree that it is better to live in a 1,000 square foot unit with a bedroom and a kitchen rather than a 4 square feet unit with a bathroom and kitchen. If we allow the natural market to create these housing opportunities, my guess is that the state will take away the directions and regulate these, accelerated dwelling units. So that's one thing I think we have to really be careful of, because of the state, as is trying to mandate something. Once they do, and we go against it, I think they could come in and take over, and now they take all of those things away from us. So this is something I think we have to really take time and look at it. So this is my recommendation.
Thank you.
Hey, everybody.
Vice Mayor Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, staff, for the presentation. And we had a conversation at SCAG, Southern California Association of Governments, about the ways that cities are starting to address.
Wow, where's Gary when you need him?
The
Southern California, the shadow government,
some
robbing
of the
us
things
of our
that were
rights.
brought up tonight in terms of making sure we have a really tight process and making sure we have some tight parameters, I support. But I do want to say that there's a reason for this, and the reason is, as people, there's this concept, this NIMBY, not my backyard concept, that the state has said literally, yes, in your backyard.
Yeah.
We will provide housing so that as people age in place, maybe they can shift to a smaller, team up with families, shift to a smaller unit, and open up the home that they might have lived in at a different place for maybe a family who can use those additional bedrooms. What I'm most hopeful, and my question tonight is going to be about, in North Long Beach and all over town, people have been illegally using accessory dwelling units anyway. I bought my first home. It had a legal structure in the garage. I got my sledgehammer out and knocked it down, and went through that process, but how can we make sure we have a process that allows people to come out of the shadows? People are living in garages. There are illegal garage conversions today.
Yep.
So my question is, how does this process help people who are already treating their garages?
Who are the
as
people living in those
dwellings?
conversions?
Is there a
Illegal
path
aliens.
for them to
That's
modernize,
what's happening
bring
in Long
into
Beach.
code, and to come out of the shadows?
Yes, I can respond to that from a staff perspective. I think we did take a look at that issue because some other cities are providing different approaches to how they address that. And I think the approach that we considered here is that if a unit can indeed meet the standards that the council adopts in this ordinance, they would certainly be able to legalize any units that meet the standards. However, if the unit does not meet the standard, I think that as a part of the process of notifying the property owner that they need to bring that particular property up to code, I think it would be incumbent upon staff to work with them to make sure that they understand the provisions and that they're really clear on how they can bring their current unit up to code. And if not, then we would just have to work with them and go through our standard code enforcement procedure.
So I just want to keep folks in mind, keep in mind the intent here, that it's to create legitimate housing opportunities for folks. I don't want to be overburdened with a process or fees that diminish someone's ability, because reality is people are going to do this. They're going to do this, and some may do it because they have the capital, they have the space, and it's an asset or an amenity.
Just because people are already doing it doesn't mean you should keep doing it.
And we've seen the tragedies when, when our laws are too rigid and it forces people to do things sort of underground. So, I'm going to support this, but I'll make sure that we do have ability to tweak it as we learn. Correct, we will have opportunity to tweak this, right?
Vice Mayor, yes, once this is adopted, certainly there's an opportunity. I think it would be appropriate for us to give it some time to see what comes out, what the demand is for these structures and how workable they are, and even to identify if there are any particular issues or problems. There are particular issues or problems with the standards that we've developed. So the suggestion would be to give it approximately 12 months or maybe 18 months to see whether we think that they are functioning in the way that this council intended. And we can certainly go back and take another look at the standards and modify them as appropriate. I would like to make one other comment related to to Councilwoman Price's request for a reduction in the size of the unit or to reduce the minimum unit size. The recommendation was for 800 square feet, and I would like to just point out that if that recommendation moves forward, we would need to modify one of the provisions in the detailed ordinance itself, which is on page 11 of the actual redlined ordinance. One of the things we did was correlate the minimum unit size to the bedroom count. And should the council proceed to adopt the 800 square foot minimum, or whichever is less the 50% of the lot area or the 800 square feet, we would need to strike line number 21 that refers to 3 or more bedrooms being 1,000 feet. But I would just like to go on the record of acknowledging that in terms of coming up with the unit size, staff thought very long and hard. We actually thought long and hard about each and every one of the standards, but there was a lot of consideration given to the unit size. And generally, we arrived at the standard of 1,000 feet based upon the primary issue of proportionality. The other factor or the consideration was that the size of the lot, the size of the existing unit, and even the whole issue of quality of life based upon the open space that was required, the lot size itself, and the unit size, that all informed us arriving at the 800 square feet, because we also thought about the comfort based upon the size of the unit, and that was our recommendation. So we felt that the standards, all of the standards, when you take them into consideration, the lot size, the primary unit size, and all of the other considerations, we thought that the 1,000 square feet was appropriate because it was proportional. However, if the will of the council is to reduce that unit size, we would need to strike that statement regarding the 3 bedrooms as a part of the ordinance. So if that could be a part of the motion, if the motion goes forward.
And so I'll just conclude so that council member can respond. So it sounds to me like there is, so first of all, that actually was good. My next question was specifically about the up to 800 with a less or more. And I would just suggest that if it's whichever is less, I would think we should flip it and say whichever is more, right? And why have an 800 cap? I think it would be easier to understand if we said 800 is the max, right? 800 is the max. I don't know. Whichever is less, whichever is more. I want to err on the side of, if we're going to limit it from 1,000 to 800, then people should be able to capitalize on that 800. That's my thought. And with the standards in place in terms of proportionality, it means that people won't have a mansion in their backyard. I actually like the idea of not having 3 bedrooms in the backyard. It's kind of, my first apartment was about 600, 700 square feet, plenty of room for me. So I would be okay with going down to 800, but I think we should say no more than 800, not whichever is less. That would be my suggestion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll just keep going right now and to the other members. Councilman Austin.
Thank you, and I appreciate all of the comments thus far. I want to commend staff for doing a lot of great work. We brought this item forth several months ago.
I don't know if you know this, but there's already on, you can get this now.
Appreciate the process going to the Planning Commission.
I look at people's reactions and I look at what other people do.
Commenting throughout that process and bringing us here today. Shows a lot of great professional work. I'm glad you brought up the impact fees. We had development impact fees on the most recent project approved in the 8th District, the Riverdale project, and we collected significant fees on that one. I'm really kind of caught on this 800 versus 1,000 square feet. So I have a couple of questions as well. The average, and to staff, if you research this, if you have that answer, that would be great. But I'm curious to know what the average lot size for single-family homes in Long Beach actually is.
I think we have some data on that.
Councilman Austin, thank you for your question. Let's see, I have a chart here. I'm going to focus in on the R1N lot, if that's okay with you, to use as an example. That is the city's most prevalent single-family zone. There are a total of 53,718 R1N lots in the city. The median lot size is 5,912. And so in terms of the percent that is above the 4,800 square feet that we are proposing for the minimum lot size for ADUs, 54% of the city's R1N lots are above that, and that means they would be able to accommodate an ADU. That's 54%. And then of the, I have data on the ones that are smaller, but I don't think that's relevant to this discussion. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of data.
That does help. And then I'm really curious about the conversation regarding density. Obviously, it's something that many people care about. But the proposed parking requirements that you have, staff has recommended, isn't that meant to help limit the density